The morning air was thick with humidity as the city of Portland stirred awake. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of damp asphalt after last night's rain. A few early joggers passed by, their rhythmic footsteps tapping on the pavement as they pushed themselves through the chill. At the edge of a worn-down park, Emily Carter adjusted the strap of her gym bag, sweat already beading on her forehead despite the cool morning. Her running shoes, scuffed but well-loved, connected with the cracked concrete with a steady, determined beat. Today was supposed to be just another day teaching gym class at the local community center, but something about this morning felt different. Emily's eyes scanned the street ahead, where a small crowd was beginning to gather near a billboard advertising the upcoming city marathon. Bright letters proclaimed, "The World Marathon Champion will be here." Her heart fluttered, not with excitement, but a deep, gnawing anxiety she hadn't felt in years. As the clock struck 7, the first glimpse of the champion appeared. A tall man with a lean, sculpted frame and eyes that held the fire of countless victories. He moved with effortless grace, a natural-born runner who had conquered courses across the globe. Cameras flashed, voices whispered. Yet, amidst the crowd's roar, Emily noticed something else, a flicker of vulnerability in the champion's gaze. Then, without warning, the man's confident stride faltered. A sharp grimace crossed his face, and he slowed to a walk. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. What was wrong with the world champion? Emily's breath caught. This was no ordinary moment. This was a challenge waiting to be answered. And then the champion looked directly at her, eyes locking in a silent plea. "If you can help me finish this marathon," his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried weight, "I'll sign your contract." The words hung in the air. Emily's mind raced. Why her? Why now? The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her answer. Emily Carter stood frozen for a moment, the champion's words echoing inside her like a thunderclap. Around them, the crowd's murmurs swelled, but she felt isolated in that sudden silence. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from running, but from the weight of a decision that seemed impossible. The man, whose name she would soon learn, was Ryan Matthews, held her gaze with unwavering intensity. There was no arrogance, no empty bravado in his eyes, only raw vulnerability and a desperate hope that clung to the edges of his tired expression. Emily's mind flashed back to why she was here in the first place. She wasn't just a gym teacher, she was a fighter in her own way. Years ago, she dreamed of becoming a professional athlete. But life had other plans. Financial struggles, family obligations, injuries, each had chipped away at those dreams until all that remained was a fierce love for helping others move, breathe, and believe in themselves. Now, standing at the crossroads, Emily felt a strange pull toward Ryan, a man who seemed to embody everything she had lost, but also everything she still believed in. "Why me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely carrying over the restless crowd. "There are plenty of coaches, trainers, and runners here." Ryan exhaled, the tightness in his jaw easing just a bit. "Because you're the only one who doesn't look at me like I'm already broken," he said, voice low but firm. "Most people see the champion, not the man who's struggling to keep running." His honesty cut through Emily's doubts like a knife. She saw something real beneath the polished exterior, the exhaustion of someone who had given everything to a dream that now threatened to crumble. "What happened to you?" she pressed, stepping closer despite the curious eyes around them. Ryan hesitated, then gestured toward the city's marathon route map pinned nearby. "A few months ago, I was at the top of my game. World record holder, unbeatable. Then during a training run, I twisted my ankle badly. But that wasn't the worst part." He paused, swallowing hard. "My sponsor pulled out. The media turned on me, and I realized I wasn't sure if I could finish the next marathon, let alone win it." Emily's chest tightened. She understood more than anyone what it meant to fight against circumstances stacked against you. "I'm not asking for a miracle," Ryan added quickly. "Just someone to help me finish, to help me believe again." A flicker of hope ignited in Emily's chest, mingled with a growing sense of responsibility. Helping Ryan wasn't just about running, it was about trust, redemption, and a chance to rewrite their stories together. "Okay," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'll help you finish the marathon, but only if you trust me completely." Ryan's eyes searched hers for a moment, then a slow, genuine smile cracked his usually guarded face. "Deal." The crowd around them began to disperse, but Emily and Ryan stayed rooted in that quiet bubble between chaos and calm. The world moved on, but here something new had begun. Over the next few days, Emily and Ryan met at the local track, a modest oval fenced by rusty chain links and lined with cracked pavement patches. The air smelled of grass and sweat, mingled with the distant hum of traffic and birdsong. Emily watched as Ryan ran, his movements at first cautious, measured. The injury was evident in his uneven stride and the grimaces he tried to hide. But beneath the physical pain, she sensed a fierceness that refused to be tamed. "Your form's off," Emily said during one session, her tone both direct and encouraging. "You're compensating for the ankle. That's going to cause more damage if you don't fix it." Ryan grimaced but nodded. "I know, I'm scared I won't be ready." "That fear's normal," Emily replied, wiping the sweat from her brow. "But if you listen to your body and push smart, you'll get there." Days turned into weeks, and their routine solidified. Mornings filled with intense training sessions, afternoons with stretches and mental coaching, evenings with shared silences that spoke volumes. They were two very different people, the world champion and the community gym teacher, but something profound was weaving them together. A shared fight against odds, a mutual respect for each other's resilience. One afternoon, after a grueling uphill sprint, Ryan collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. "Why do you do this?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why push so hard when you never got the chance to make it big?" Emily sat beside him, wiping dirt from his forehead. "Because I still believe there's a way. Not just for me, but for anyone who refuses to give up." He smiled faintly. "You're tougher than you look." She laughed softly. "And you're softer than your reputation suggests." Their banter was easy, but beneath it, the tension of what lay ahead simmered. Both knew the marathon wasn't just a race, it was a test of everything they believed in. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat alone in her tiny apartment, her thoughts tangled with doubts. Could she really help Ryan? Was she enough? Her phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "If I don't make it, it won't be because you didn't try." The words settled over her like a promise and a challenge. Emily's jaw clenched. This wasn't just about finishing a marathon anymore. It was about facing their fears and proving that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships could change everything. The next morning, at the start line of the marathon, the city was alive with cheers, music, and nervous energy. Emily stood beside Ryan, heart pounding alongside his. The gunshot echoed, and they surged forward, two strangers bound by a promise, running toward an uncertain finish. But as the miles stretched on, a shadow loomed, a sudden twist that neither of them saw coming, threatening to tear apart everything they'd built. The marathon had begun with the hum of anticipation, the pounding rhythm of thousands of feet hitting the pavement, and the cheers of an eager crowd. Emily ran alongside Ryan, her breath steady, but her mind alert to every flicker of pain in his movements. The early miles felt promising. Ryan's pace was strong, his form better than she dared hope. But beneath the surface, something was unraveling. By mile 8, Ryan's face tightened. His usually smooth stride became uneven, each step heavier than the last. Emily's instincts screamed to slow down, to check on him, but he waved her off with a grim smile, determined not to show weakness. "You've got this," he murmured between labored breaths, but Emily sensed the cracks in his voice, a brittle edge beneath the courage. The city's streets blurred past, lined with cheering spectators holding signs and offering water. The sun climbed higher, its heat pressing down relentlessly, draining energy from even the most seasoned runners. Emily's gaze flicked down to Ryan's ankle, swollen and wrapped in a brace. But his grimace told her the injury was worse than he admitted. She knew pushing through pain was a double-edged sword, a dangerous gamble that could destroy everything. As they rounded the bend toward mile 12, the tension tightened like a noose. "Ryan," she said firmly, "we need to slow. This isn't just about finishing, it's about finishing safe." He shook his head, frustration flickering in his eyes. "I can't. If I stop now, everything I've worked for is gone. I promised I'd finish." Emily stopped, pulling him gently to the sidewalk, ignoring the curious glances from other runners. "And what if you finish like this? Hurt worse, unable to run ever again? Is that a promise you want to keep?" Ryan looked away, the weight of her words sinking in. "It's not just the injury," he admitted quietly, voice cracking. "It's everything else. The sponsors, the media, the expectations. If I fail now, it's not just my career that's over. It's my identity." Emily's heart clenched. She'd seen that look before, the pressure of carrying the world on your shoulders. "We're not here to prove to them, Ryan," she said, softer now. "We're here to prove to ourselves that we can rise even when it feels impossible." He exhaled deeply, the fire in his eyes dimming, but not dying. "But what if I'm not enough?" Emily reached out, gripping his arm firmly. "You're more than enough, but you don't have to do this alone." That moment forged a fragile bond between them, not just of coach and athlete, but of two souls fighting to reclaim something lost. The miles ahead tested that bond brutally. At mile 16, the crowd's cheers blurred into a distant hum as Ryan's ankle gave a sudden, sharp twist. He stumbled, clutching his leg, pain flashing across his face like lightning. Emily was immediately at his side, steadying him. "You have to stop," she urged, her voice fierce despite the panic rising inside. Ryan shook his head stubbornly, teeth clenched. "No, just a little more. I'm almost there." Emily's hands trembled as she helped him up. They moved forward, step by agonizing step. The marathon was no longer a race. It was a battlefield of wills. Each mile dragged like an eternity, sweat and tears mingling with the grit and determination etched into their bodies. Around them, other runners surged ahead, the finish line teasingly close but heartbreakingly distant. Then the unexpected happened. As they approached mile 20, a voice called out sharply from the sidelines. "Ryan, you're risking permanent damage. Stop now." It was Dr. Marcus Hale, a renowned sports medicine specialist and a former mentor of Ryan's. His face was a mask of concern and frustration. Ryan's jaw tightened, the old wounds of rivalry and broken trust flaring up. He hesitated, torn between respect and pride. Emily caught the tension immediately. "Listen to him," she whispered urgently. "You need to consider what's best for you." Ryan's gaze flicked between Emily and Dr. Hale, the storm inside him visible to anyone who looked closely. Finally, with a bitter sigh, Ryan stopped running. The crowd's cheers dimmed, replaced by a heavy silence that felt like defeat. Emily could see the pain etched in Ryan's posture, not just physical but deeper invisible wounds. Maybe I'm not the champion anymore," he muttered, eyes downcast. Emily knelt beside him, searching his face. "You're more than the medals, the records, or the finish line. You're a fighter because you keep trying, even when it's hard." Tears welled in Ryan's eyes, tears he'd been holding back for months. "Then help me," he whispered. "Help me find a way." That night, back at the small gym where they'd trained, Emily and Ryan faced the harsh reality. The injury was worse than they thought, and finishing the marathon as planned might be impossible. But surrender wasn't an option, not for Emily, and certainly not for Ryan. Together, they began to map out a new path, one where victory wasn't measured by crossing a finish line first, but by facing their fears and refusing to give up. As Emily laid out the plan, longer recovery, alternative training, rebuilding strength, Ryan's expression hardened with resolve. "We'll do this my way," he said, voice steady. No more hiding, no more pretending. Emily smiled, feeling the spark of something greater flicker between them. The marathon had become more than a race. It was a test of trust, courage, and the power of second chances. But just as hope began to blossom, a sudden phone call shattered their fragile peace. Emily's face went pale as she listened. "There's more at stake than we realized," she whispered. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Emily swallowed hard. "You're not just fighting your injury or your doubts. Someone wants to make sure you don't finish, no matter what." The news hit Emily like a punch to the gut. Someone was actively working against Ryan, sabotaging his recovery, threatening not only his chance to finish the marathon, but his very career and safety. The revelation added a shadow to every breath they took, twisting their fight into something far more dangerous. "It has to be someone with access," Emily said, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room of the community gym. "Someone who knows your schedule, your weaknesses." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling beneath his calm exterior. "But who? I've burned bridges with almost everyone, sponsors, rivals, even some friends. It's like I'm being punished for past mistakes." Emily's gaze hardened. "Then we have to be smarter than them. We need to control the narrative before it controls us." The following days blurred into a whirlwind of guarded training sessions, shadowy phone calls, and uneasy glances. Emily took on the role of protector and strategist, coordinating Ryan's rehab with quiet vigilance. Every step forward was met with a new obstacle. One morning, as Emily unlocked the gym doors, she noticed something off. Equipment tampered with, water bottles mysteriously spilled on the floor. A subtle threat, but enough to shake their fragile confidence. "Someone's watching us," Emily said, voice low as Ryan arrived behind her, eyes sharp. Ryan nodded, clenched fists betraying his calm. "Good. Let them watch. They'll see we won't back down." But as the training progressed, physical strain clashed with emotional fatigue. Ryan's injured ankle flared unpredictably, setting back progress and igniting old fears. During one particularly grueling session on a rain-soaked track, Ryan's foot caught on a slick patch. He stumbled, pain exploding through his leg. Emily rushed to his side. "You okay?" Ryan shook his head, biting back a curse. "I'm fine." But the truth lingered in his strained breath and haunted eyes. Emily knew this wasn't just a setback in training, it was a fracture in Ryan's spirit. Their bond, once a source of strength, began to crack under pressure. One evening, after a frustrating day of therapy and slow progress, Ryan snapped. "I'm tired, Emily. Tired of fighting. Maybe I'm not meant to finish this race, or any race." Emily's heart ached. "This isn't just about the marathon. It's about who you are." "You can't give up now." Ryan's gaze hardened. "Maybe who I am isn't enough anymore." The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken fears. Emily reached out, voice trembling. "I believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself." He looked away, a tear escaping down his cheek. "I don't know if I can." Amidst the physical and emotional battles, a new, chilling piece of the puzzle emerged. Emily received an anonymous message, a video showing a masked figure sabotaging Ryan's training gear. "We know your secret," the message warned. Panic surged, but Emily steeled herself. "Whoever this is, they want to break you, but we won't let them." Ryan clenched his jaw. "Then we'll face them. Together." As the marathon date loomed closer, tensions spiraled. The city buzzed with rumors, questioning Ryan's health, doubting his comeback. Media scrutiny intensified, amplifying every misstep, every falter. Emily and Ryan found themselves isolated, fighting not only physical limits, but a growing storm of doubt and sabotage. In one pivotal moment, during a late-night training run under flickering streetlights, Ryan nearly collapsed. Emily caught him breathless and shaken. "This isn't just about the race," she whispered, eyes fierce. "It's about reclaiming your life." He nodded, determination reigniting. "No more hiding, no more running from the past. But just as they seemed ready to push forward, Emily's phone buzzed again, a message that froze the blood in her veins. "Stop now, or someone you care about will pay the price." The threat was real, and it was closer than either of them dared to imagine. The message on Emily's phone glowed ominously in the dim light of the gym's back office. She stared at the words over and over, the threat sinking like a stone into her gut. "Stop now, or someone you care about will pay the price." She swallowed hard, heart hammering. Someone close to Ryan was in danger. She needed to tell him. But how? When Ryan arrived for their next session, Emily's face was pale and tense. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Ryan's brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" Emily hesitated, then laid the phone on the table between them, the screen facing him. His eyes scanned the message, and then darkened. "That's why the sabotage," he said bitterly. "They're not just trying to ruin my career, they're trying to hurt my family." He looked up, pain and resolve mingling in his gaze. "My sister," he confessed. "She lives alone, away from all this. But if they think they can use her to break me—" Emily reached out, taking his hand. "We won't let that happen." They spent the night planning, contacting Ryan's sister, setting up protection, and alerting authorities discreetly. Emily's usually calm and collected demeanor cracked only once, when Ryan revealed the full weight of his past, the fractured relationships, the guilt he carried for the years lost to chasing fame. "I thought I was running away from my mistakes," he said, voice raw. "But they caught up with me." Emily's eyes softened. "You're not running anymore. You're facing it." In the days that followed, something shifted between them. The professional boundary blurred, replaced by an intimacy born of shared struggle and trust. They trained harder, pushed farther, but it was no longer just about finishing a race. It was about reclaiming dignity, proving they could rise from the wreckage. One morning, after a particularly tough session, Ryan stopped mid-stride and looked at Emily, vulnerability shining through. "Thank you," he said simply, "for believing in me when I couldn't." Emily smiled, warmth flooding her chest. "You don't have to thank me. We're in this together." But just as hope blossomed, the past reared its ugly head again. Emily discovered a secret Ryan had hidden, one that threatened to undo everything. Late one night, she found old emails on his laptop, messages from a rival athlete filled with threats and manipulation. Ryan had been battling not only physical injuries, but a web of lies and deceit designed to sabotage him from within the sport. Confronting him was painful. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily demanded, hurt and disbelief mingling. Ryan looked away. "I thought I could handle it alone. I didn't want to drag you into my mess." Emily shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "We don't have to fight alone. That's what this is about." That night they talked for hours, about trust, fear, and the power of vulnerability. The revelation changed their dynamic. Ryan opened up more, letting Emily in not just as a coach, but as a partner in his battle. They realized that finishing the marathon was no longer just a physical test. It was a journey of healing, forgiveness, and courage. As dawn broke, Emily and Ryan stood side by side, the city waking around them. The race was coming, and so was their reckoning. Race day had arrived, with a grey sky heavy with the threat of rain, casting a somber mood over the sprawling city streets. The air buzzed with anticipation, reporters crowding the sidelines, the murmur of thousands of runners warming up, and the occasional distant rumble of thunder. Emily stood beside Ryan at the starting line, heart pounding in tandem with his. Their journey had led to this moment, a culmination of pain, hope, betrayal, and trust. "You ready?" she asked softly. Ryan took a slow breath, eyes scanning the crowd, then locking onto Emily's steady gaze. "Ready as I'll ever be." The starting gun cracked, and the sea of runners surged forward. For the first few miles, Ryan moved with a fluid strength that defied the doubts of the past months. Emily kept pace alongside him, her coaching voice low and calm, reminding him to stay steady, listen to his body. But as they hit mile 10, a sudden sharp pain shot through Ryan's ankle. He faltered, grimacing but pushing on, fueled by adrenaline and sheer will. Emily could see the strain etched deeper in his face with every step. The crowd's cheers faded into a blur as she focused solely on him. At mile 15, the sabotage reared its ugly head again. A spectator, a man in a dark jacket, threw something onto the course right in Ryan's path. The object skidded dangerously close to his feet. Emily's eyes widened in alarm. Ryan stumbled but caught himself. "Stay focused," Emily urged, voice steady despite the chaos. But it wasn't just physical obstacles that challenged them. Rumors and media whispers had intensified, painting Ryan as reckless and unfit. Whispers of disqualification swirled like storm clouds, threatening to undo everything. Yet Ryan refused to quit. At mile 20, exhaustion weighed heavy, his breathing ragged, muscles screaming. "Emily!" he gasped, halting suddenly. "I don't know if I can—" "Look at me," Emily said firmly, grabbing his hands. "You are not alone. Remember why you started." Tears mingled with rain as Ryan nodded, the fire in his eyes reigniting. Side by side, they pushed forward, each step a defiant shout against every fear, every shadow. Then, just when it seemed they would cross the finish line together, a figure blocked their path. It was the man who had sent the threats and sabotaged the training. Someone from Ryan's past, determined to stop him at all costs. Words were exchanged, tense and raw. The crowd gasped as security moved in. But the damage was done. Ryan's ankle twisted in a final excruciating moment. He collapsed. Emily dropped to his side, panic flooding her. "I'm sorry," Ryan whispered, face pale but determined. "I gave it everything." Emily shook her head fiercely. "No, you gave more than most ever could." The finish line loomed just ahead, taunting, unreachable. But in that moment, victory was no longer about crossing it first. It was about fighting with heart, refusing to be broken. The world watched as Emily helped Ryan to his feet. Together, they took slow, steady steps forward. And as they crossed the line, last but unbowed, the crowd erupted in cheers. The crowd's roar faded into a distant hum as Emily and Ryan leaned against each other just beyond the finish line. The cool rain soaking through their clothes, mingling with sweat and tears. They had finished. Not first, not with records broken, but they had finished. And somehow, that mattered more than anything. Ryan's breath came in ragged gasps, his injured ankle throbbing fiercely. But his eyes shone with something deeper than pain, a fierce pride, a quiet victory. Emily smiled, exhausted but radiant. "You did it. We did it." Ryan nodded, voice hoarse. "I couldn't have done this without you." She shook her head. "No, we did this together." In the days that followed, the story of the unlikely duo spread like wildfire. The news wasn't about who won or lost. It was about courage, resilience, and the power of trust. Sponsors came back, not for medals or times, but for the story of a man who refused to quit and a teacher who believed in him when no one else did. Ryan visited his sister, safe and supported. Emily stood by his side, not just as a coach, but as a partner in a life transformed. Months later, in the quiet of a new morning, Emily laced up her shoes in the same worn gym where it all began. Ryan walked in, leaning on a crutch but smiling. "Ready for another run?" he teased. Emily grinned. "Only if you promise to take it easy this time." He laughed, the sound warm and full of hope. Their journey had started with a desperate promise. "If you can help me finish this marathon, I'll sign your contract." But it ended with something far greater. A bond forged in struggle, trust, and unwavering belief. Because sometimes the true victory isn't the race itself, it's the courage to run it together. The road ahead was still long, filled with challenges they couldn't yet see, but they knew one thing for certain: they would face it side by side. When you run with heart, every finish line is just the beginning.